The first one is called knees. I was saddened to see there was no entry for knees in the aforementioned dictionary. There ought to be. Knees. Almost as much can be gleaned about a person's character from their knees as from their face. A person with short, fat knees is dim-witted and intemperate, while those with long knees may well have artists' knees, but be foolish with money. Persons with long foreknees are to be mistrusted. The right foreknee is sometimes called the poison knee, and is thought to be venomous, so should never be used to rub ointment onto a wound, although it may be used to rub spittle onto ringworm patches. And it's a good idea to cross your knees while telling a white lie, or before embarking on an undertaking, or if you want to negate the effects of walking under a ladder. Pointing a knee at someone is, of course, thought rude, and should especially be discouraged at funerals, for it may lead to the premature death of the person doing the knee pointing. Pulling the knee joints to see if they crack is a test of love. If they make the correct sound, the knee cracker can be certain that he or she is in someone else's thoughts. If two people coincidentally utter the same words together, they should immediately link both sets of knees and make a wish. This is sure to come true as long as the knee linking is done in complete silence. If you will indulge me, I shall read two more entries from my improved dictionary of superstitions. Number 2, the budgerigar. There is no entry for budgerigar in the aforementioned dictionary. There ought to be. The budgerigar, or house petrel, as it is known in parts of Lancashire, is thought to be a tremendously lucky bird. If you see one on a Wednesday and there hasn't been an outbreak of whooping cough or any other such pestilence within the past month, you can be sure to have great fortune. Tables. In certain country districts, a table is considered an omen of bad luck. If, during the night, a table appears in a previously tableless household, it is a sure sign that it will rain for 40 days. Either that, or the firstborn will be complete in every way, except that its face will be on the back of its head, rather than the front. How long do you do this for?
Oh, ages.
In that case, I shall read a poem from this work here, published in 2009 by Red Squirrel Press. This comes by way of a request, kind of, by Steve at the back, because he likes it. This one's called The Bodgers. Yes. There was a somewhat libelous reference to me being a bodger and a Buddhist. I'm quite happy to be considered a Buddhist, but this lady here, I believe, referred to me as a bodger. This poem is called The Bodgers. It needs a little bit of explanation. It's about me and my father, my late father. We both shared an extraordinary talent for making things with the bread knife. This being the only piece of DIY equipment we could ever wield with any sense of purpose or skill. When he died, I wrote several poignant poems and put them in the bin, which is where they belonged. And then I thought, you know, people think about the things they could have said to their parents before they died, or the things he could have done with them. And one thing I thought about was going bodging in a meaningful way with my father. This was inspired by something I read in a little dictionary. You can gather I don't go out much, And in this dictionary is an illustrated dictionary which helped no end. It talked about bodging, and bodging not only was this thing that me and my father did with the bread knife, but it also turned out to be the name given to the handicraft of tinkers. Tinkers were travelling folk who went around the country mending things and making things, and one of the things they did was they would, it says here, they would buy a coppice of trees, and they would build a shelter at the site, and they would lay the wood to make spindles for chair legs. So it says here, I imagined myself and my late father, also an inveterate bodger, bodging. So I imagined us doing this kind of bodging, but bodging it. You with me? Okay. Keep up. Right. The bodgers. People paid us to stay out of their fragile houses. That's how we made our money. We used it to buy a beach coppice a long way off. We shared the driving. It was uneventful. There were long silences, interspersed with football talk. Sometimes we'd start off in third and stop at green lights, but our accidents were mostly minor, caused by staring at cows and clouds at right angles to the road. The trouble started with the shelter. We had the instructions, they were incomplete. We swore at them and at each other. By nightfall, we had only one wall up. We slept in the car. It was a misty night. Next day, we were keen to get at our coppice. We got out our tools, the bread knife, the pack of screwdrivers from Everything's a Pound, an axe we'd used to open a paint tin, and a brace of model maker's hacksaws. After an hour, I was hanging off branches. He was hurling rocks, which the coppice hurled back. We shouted at the wood and at each other. We broke the hacksaws in hacking. There was blood on the cheese when we broke for lunch. There was blood on the bread knife when we used it to shave a tree to chair spindle thickness. By sundown, we had enough for a three-legged footstool. And two of those had been sellotaped. Badly. Meanwhile, the shelter was still mostly flat-packed on the glass. It was then that the man from the Bodgers Guild came round and rescinded our membership. I went on holiday once, and I wrote about it in this book here. There are several poems about Paris. They're in there just to make me look slightly flash. One of them is about a job I had. Jay kindly mentioned several jobs I had. One job I had, which she didn't mention, was delivering wine in the banlieue, the suburbs of Paris. I could read that one to you, but I'm not. I'm going to read another one, which is about France. I went on holiday with my present wife in Normandy. Normandy is a part of France which we used to own. And it's in here. Yes, my wife, I should say, is one of those people who can keep the shining in the house. I, madam, am with you. Yay. It's taken me a great deal of courage even to say the word, the shining. I've never seen, you know that bit when they get the hotel, when they arrive in the hotel, I've never seen what happens after that. I even find the word hotel very funny. So my wife likes those kind of films, and she, as for reasons which will become apparent in this poem, it was a useful knowledge she had. I'd never seen a horror film for many, many years and didn't really know much about them. This is called The Thing on the Roof. And it's something that happened. It's a true story, ladies and gentlemen. It's a true story. This happened to me and my present wife in Normandy, a bit of France we used to want. Right. The thing on the roof. You always get that bit wrong, you see. The eaves didn't come down most of the way to the ground. There was a decent-sized wall, too high for most things to scale. But I get the next bit right. It was late. Very late. We'd been all the way to Paris and back, not set off until after lunch, parked the car on a housing estate in the suburbs, got the train in, had a meal on the left bank, taunted a police van of scoundrels, marvelled at the smart cars of Saint-Germain, caught the Dernier metro, been stranded in a ghetto, somehow found our way back to the car, driven to Normandy in the early hours, seen a fox on the road and arrived exhausted, craving sleep in the gîte. You take over because, for reasons that will become clear, I don't have first-hand experience of the finer details. Hadn't been in bed more than 5 minutes, you say, when we heard it. It was padding across the roof, and it was heavy. About the weight of a man. We just bolted the shutters, and it was coming down to each one in turn. You'd seen too many horror films. I, however, had seen very few. Didn't know if this was in the plot or not. Instantly fell asleep, which was probably an instinctively animalistic thing to do. Next morning, I was still alive. And so were you, but you'd had considerably less sleep. Remains to this day a mystery. Useful as a late-night tale, and as a demonstration of my power of slumber. Okay. Doing from here. I used to drive into Sunderland along the seafront. There are several poems about Sunderland here, so I don't usually read them, but I feel I ought to in here. This one was written, as I say, I was driving to work and I heard on the radio an extraordinary fact about the distance between the surface of the Earth and outer space. Madam, it'll be over soon, don't worry. That was about my power slumber, not yours, okay? I sound like your songs. Right. This is called Outer Space. It's just past Thirsk. Down here, with our laws and privet hedges, our insurance policies and tellies, our museums and Marmite, our histories of civilization and our lawnmowers, our philosophies and our thermal underwear, we're always, and have always been, just down from up there. Think of all the leagues of land and ocean we crossed to find the edge of our own backyard. All the time, the ends of the earth were just above our heads. Nowhere has always been our nearest neighbour. Think of all the spears and stones we have thrown beneath its floor. We're not talking light years. Round here it goes like this. Middlesbrough, 24 miles. Thirsk, 50. Outer space, 62. Outer space is just past Thirsk. I'm going nowhere and a traffic jam on the radio tells me how near it is. Above, the route is clear. Across the road, the giant rhubarbs in the park have taken on a Venusian complexion. Do you want me to continue?
Yes.
How many? One more. Here's a poem which can be actually found in another book. So there are 3 books. In the 3rd book, I'm only responsible for 1 page of it. That 1 page is taken up with the poem I'm about to read to you now. And it's another very serious subject. It involves religion and cheap television. It's called Come Dine With Me. I should explain the provenance of this poem. I was asked very kindly by somebody who, Sheila down there, my publisher, knows very well and has very good words for, to write a poem. Well, we were asked, many poets, writers were asked to write poems about popular culture. I lecture in that, so I thought, great, I'll do something that'll really be splendid to show off with. And I thought of all the existentialist French filmmakers and stuff I could write about and appear extremely hip. But by the time I got to do it, actually by the time I realised that the race had begun, all the fancy names had gone. So I thought, what the hell can I write about which would make me seem extremely cool and would show that my knowledge of popular culture is profound. And I thought I'd write about Come Dine With Me, which I'm sure none of you here will know is an example of popular television. Some people call it reality TV. I watched this programme and came to certain conclusions about it. I'm quite convinced of the veracity of these conclusions, and I hope you will be also once I've explained how Come Dine With Me works its magic. Come Dine With Me is not about competitive cooking. It's about God. It confirms that he is invisible, but all-seeing and, as I suspected, very sarky. He is not a patient God. He is not a tolerant God. He sees the faults in our little plans, our ill-thought-out itineraries, and most of all, our recipes. He does not hold back. He does not hold his tongue. He makes jokes at our expense, and he cracks them with other invisible, all-seeing beings. Come Dine With Me confirms a lot of the stuff in the Bible. He meant that bit about pride. If we find our little jokes amusing, or we think our decor is cool, he will smite us without mercy. He is also cuttingly disdainful of those who think great riches will inevitably be theirs. Much of the New Testament material is, however, revealed to be wishful thinking. God is particularly down on the meek and the naff, although the latter are not specified in traditional versions of the Beatitudes. Come Dine With Me is not about competitive cooking. It just looks like it is. That's the clever thing. If it was billed as a program about religion, we'd switch over to watch a crappy reality show instead.